All right, hello everybody. My name is Allie, and I'm here with Nora's Nursery, and we have a very, very exciting guest today. We have Laura here. She's a sleep consultant and expert. You can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I am Laura Wilson. Thank you so much for having me, Nora's Nursery. I am a senior sleep consultant, and I'm here today to kind of go through a bunch of sleep, topic and questions. Before that, though, I just want to introduce myself a little bit so everyone, all the viewers, can know a little bit more about me. So, I have been doing sleep for a really long time, 12 years. I have three kids myself. They are 12, 10, and 5, so not so little anymore, but just lots of different challenges. Before I became a sleep consultant, I was a school teacher. So yeah, I worked with the Peel District School Board for 10 years. I call myself a retired school teacher now because I do this full time. And yeah, so I've been in like the baby, toddler, kid world for a really long time. I'm super passionate about sleep. I'm often, I do a lot of these presentations and podcasts, and I'm often told that I give away way too much information, but I just love talking about sleep and, helping others and getting everyone the sleep that they need and feeling well rested. So yeah, hopefully you guys get lots of information out of me today.
So the first topic we're going to be talking about today is sleep training. So can you tell us a little bit about sleep training and what that is, what it means?
Yeah, so, sleep training, sleep work, sleep coaching, whatever you want to call it, sleep training kind of has like a bad rap nowadays, that title, but it's basically teaching your little one how to go to sleep on their own. That's kind of the ultimate goal, is creating a little bit of that independence for their little ones, just in terms of, it's actually really their first time that they're independent, right? First time that like a child is doing something on their own. So yeah, it's parents teaching their little one how to go to sleep, basically. We have to teach our little ones how to like ride a bike, how to swim, how to walk, how to talk, how to eat. And, sometimes we need to teach them how to sleep as well. So you're going to do sleep work, and you're going to give your child the skills to be able to fall asleep independently.
Some of the things like I wish I knew before I had my daughter too,
I
things like
know.
that.
Yeah. Even my daughter, like my older one is 12. And so
Mhm.
my industry had just kind of started when
Oh, okay.
I had her. So there wasn't really, like, now there's tons of us out there, but when I first had her, there wasn't really a lot of information. So,
Hmm.
you had kind of had to like, puzzle pieces, put it together, figure it out. And like,
Yeah,
I
figure it
was
out.
like, I did
Oh,
so many
so
things
difficult.
wrong.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a good thing because especially like as you're learning, as a parent, and then you have, if you have another kid, you're kind of learning through that experience too, but then having, the
Totally.
expertise behind that also. That's awesome.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it's really good. With my first one, like I said, I kind of winged it. It
yeah,
worked out, but
that's what
she
we
was
did too.
already like, she was already a decent sleeper, so like I was lucky with that. And then the second one, I had to sleep train. He was like
Mhm.
3 or 4 months, and then with my third, like right away again, like I was like a sleep consultant and third
Mhm.
child, so I
You
did
already
it
know
right
what
as
to do at that point.
I already know what to do, and you have more confidence, and you know that your little one's going to be okay. Like they're gonna make
Hmm.
it through this. It's hard,
Yeah.
but they're gonna be totally fine, and they'll still like love me. Like
Yeah,
I did as
yeah.
a newborn. Yeah, I did it as a newborn. So
Mhm.
yeah, there was like minimal tears, and yeah, I
That's
never really
great.
had to like officially sleep train with her because you just do it a little differently as newborns,
Hmm.
but. Yeah, so every child just gets a little bit, easier and more
Yeah, that's
experience as a
awesome.
mother for sure. Hmm.
Mhm. So at what age do you recommend sleep training if someone was interested in doing that or taking that route?
Yeah, so I usually tell people 12 weeks, 12 pounds, no medical issues, no health concerns,
Hmm.
like eating and everything is going really, feeding is going really, really well, is when you can actually officially start. Generally, they're, a baby at that age, and they have the skills to and tools to be able to learn how to go to sleep on their own. But really, I work with like 0 to 10 years of age. So
Oh,
you can
okay.
do sleep, yeah, you can do sleep training really at any age.
I didn't
I
know that
always,
either. I thought it was
yeah,
just infants.
I know, right? It seems like that. A lot of people, they contact me, when their little one's like 2 or 3, because that's when the fun really starts. Like you have a
Yeah.
2-year-old
Yeah,
yourself,
once my
right?
daughter turned
So
2, yeah.
yeah, those toddlers are a handful, and they're like, "Is it too late? Like, have we messed this up?" And I'm like, "No, you like can do this at any age for sure." But I always
Yeah.
tell people it's whenever like they are ready, because
Hmm.
whenever you're doing any type of sleep work, it's 75% parent, 25% child. So,
Okay.
baby or child or toddler or whatever, they're ready, right? Like they can do it at any time, but it's whenever you are ready. Like you are the one, the parents are the one that are going to be putting in the work, and I'm there to like coach them through it, but they have to do it. So you have to feel ready. You have to 100% feel like this is time, we need to do this. So yeah, 0 to 10 is what I work with, but really it's whenever, the parents feel most comfortable and ready to do it and be, consistent with it.
Okay, so what are some of the main benefits of sleep training?
Perfect. Great question. So the obvious one, number one, is that your child can go to sleep independently. So, babies, toddlers, even adults, they wake up. We wake up multiple times at night. And so when your child doesn't know how to go to sleep, when they wake up, they will then look for you to go back to sleep. So that means, broken sleep for you, broken sleep with your little
Yeah.
one. So when we teach them to go to sleep on their own, essentially they'll wake up and, hopefully, unless like something is wrong,
Yeah.
sick or whatever, nightmare, that kind of thing, then hopefully they'll just roll over and go back to sleep. So better quality sleep, number one for
Okay.
sure. Every time your little one is waking up and it's taking them X number of like minutes or even hours to go back to sleep, it's like you're
Hmm.
sleeping in like fragments, right? That's not fun for
Yeah.
anyone. So better quality sleep for sure, which is great for like physiological repair, physical repair, feeling a lot more well rested during the day.
Hmm.
And then, so that's the obvious one. And then also, a lot more independence for you and your child. Sometimes if your child can't go to sleep without you, then, there's not a lot of freedom for you. You have to be there at
It's true.
bedtime. You have to be there throughout the night, or, I deal with a lot of clients where, the child doesn't even want anything to do with the other partner, like the other, other mom or other
Yep.
dad. And so it's like heavily reliant on that one, parent. And, how do you go out for
Yeah.
the evening? How do you get a babysitter? What about work during the day if your child doesn't
True.
know how to go to sleep for
Hmm.
naps during the day? So, yeah, that's the other probably really big benefit is that it gets a little bit of more independence for the child and for yourself. So it opens up a little bit more freedom, back in your
Hmm.
life for sure, and a little bit more normalcy, like for that, parent who's kind of the main caregiver.
Hmm. And I like that you pointed out too, because that's something I didn't even think about before I had my daughter, like about the whole aspect of like going out or like having her be more attached to me and less to him. If I'm the one always like responding, in the middle of the night and stuff like that too. And then if she were to sleep over at my mom's house or something like that, being able to fall asleep on her own. That's stuff I would have honestly I would have never thought about before
No.
before I had my kids. So
Yeah, right. It makes you feel a little bit more normal too. Like if you can
yeah,
get like your
yeah,
evenings back, or being able to go out with friends, or let's say you like work in the evenings, or
that's
something
true.
like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, it's important, and it's important to share the workload. It's a
Yeah.
lot, right? It's a lot on like that one
Especially
person
freshly
mentally,
postpartum too. Yeah.
physically. Yeah, right. So it's really important to share that workload for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. So, can you walk us through some of the popular sleep training methods?
Yeah, yeah. So if you think of sleep training kind of like on a scale or a spectrum, on like one end of the scale is your, popular method of your cry it out or extinction. So that's kind of
Yeah.
leaving your child, in their sleep space, closing the door, walking out and like never responding to them, kind of your cry it out
Hmm.
method. And then on the other end of the scale or spectrum, is your kind of no cry sleep solutions, like your pick up, put down, your shush pat. So, it's like kind of labeled more the gentle sleep solutions.
Okay.
So you have the two extremes on the one end, and
Yeah.
then in the middle is your controlled crying, where yes, there's going to be tears, but
Hmm.
you can be there for your child, right? You're controlling those tears, you're minimizing those tears.
Hmm.
So on the cry it out extinction one, that can be a little harsher. It's something that I don't
Yeah.
particularly practice because it's harsh. It can work, but it's also, in my opinion, a little unrealistic. There's going to be,
Okay.
when I'm working with my clients, I kind of want to give them the whole picture of how to respond to their child in like many different situations, right? So if like you just teach your child to go to sleep that way, but then let's say they are crying in the night and they're sick, they're teething, they're not well, what a nightmare, whatever's going on,
Hmm.
that method doesn't really give you strategies just in terms of like how to deal with your child in the night.
Yeah, that
You're
makes
gonna
sense.
have to deal with your child in the night. So
Hmm.
it's more efficient, I'd say, to be able to, give my clients realistic solutions in terms of day-to-day life and what can happen,
Hmm.
when they're upset. So that way is like, quick, this is how you do it, but doesn't really set you up for like long-term success. And then
Hmm.
on
That
the
makes
other
sense.
way, the no cry sleep solutions, the gentle sleep
Hmm.
solution, I would love to practice those solutions. I would love for those strategies to work. I just haven't seen it work in like all situations with all
Hmm.
babies and toddlers. Every child's different. So sometimes it can work, sometimes it doesn't
Hmm.
work at all, and sometimes it only works for a short period of time. So when
Okay.
I'm working with my clients, I don't really want to give them a band-aid solution. I want to give them a long-lasting solution so that, when they run into bumps and hiccups down the road, they know exactly what to do. So
Hmm.
unfortunately, I don't practice that approach. I'd probably be a billionaire if I, had the magic sleep solution to get kids to actually sleep without tears.
Yeah.
So the one that I love is kind of that controlled crying where you can be there for your child, you can touch your child, you can pick up your child. You're not abandoning your child in any
Hmm.
way, but you're also teaching them to go to sleep. So that's kind of your
Hmm.
controlled crying, sleep
Like
solution.
a happy
So
medium.
a
Yeah.
happy medium, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So, let me see. That was actually because when I only know a little bit about sleep training. That's not
Yeah.
something that I did with my daughter, but whenever I heard about it on like TikTok, social media,
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, they're like you were saying, are usually familiar with the cried out method, and they kind of have
Totally.
this idea that you just put the baby in the crib, close the door, you know,
Yeah.
turn up the TV.
Yeah.
You kind of just are ignoring your child. But I like that there's a lot more to it than that, especially
Totally.
like you're saying, like finding that balance. And I like how you pointed out too that you're gonna have to deal with kids crying. It's inevitable because, teething,
Yeah.
waking up with, if they're having a fever, if they're sick or something like that, they're going to cry. So yeah,
Yeah.
I like
Crying
that
is
there's like
natural, right? Like that's
realistic.
just what kids
Exactly.
do.
I cry. I cry all the time.
I know
It's
it's very
totally,
natural. It's very
totally
normal. That's how they
normal.
communicate, when they're frustrated, when they're
Yeah,
sad, when they're angry. So,
exactly.
eliminating their crying is like unrealistic in my opinion, right? But can we be
Yeah,
there for them? For sure. Can we help them through that process? For sure. So,
exactly.
yeah, the cry it out is like, easy, quick, like it'll
Hmm.
work. But then what happens in like a month or 2 months when, they hit like a sleep regression or something
Yeah.
happens and or they're sick or they're teething or you're on vacation or
Hmm.
so you gotta have a plan in place just in terms of how to deal with all of those situations. So
Hmm.
yeah, there's a lot that goes into it for sure for sleep training.
Okay. So why do some parents hesitate when they're thinking about sleep training?
The biggest one definitely is the tears, right? The tears
Yeah.
are really,
Yeah.
really hard. Like they're hard for everyone, I've heard, many babies and toddlers crying in all my years of experience, and it's still hard for me to hear that. It's, heartbreaking to hear our little ones. So
Yeah.
usually it's like a mental thing for most parents, right?
Yeah.
They don't like to hear their little one cry. Or the other kind of myth that I hear a lot is that they're traumatizing their child, right?
I've heard
By,
that one too.
having those
Hmm.
tears. Yeah, by having those tears, they're traumatizing their child. And there's no scientific evidence to support that. Like we just talked about, like kids cry, right? When
Yeah,
you have to
especially
go to
before they can
work,
talk. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Or when you have to go to work and you have to drop off your child at daycare and they're crying, are you traumatizing them? Are you,
Hmm.
causing them emotional damage? No, they're just tears, right? So,
Hmm.
yeah, a lot of people think that they're traumatizing their child in some way, or it's just really hard for them to hear their child cry, which is completely
Yeah.
understandable. And so they're not quite ready. Like I said at the very beginning, you do have to
True.
be 100% ready and committed,
Hmm.
to do this. And there's pros and cons to it for sure. And you kind of have to like, weigh the pros and figure out why you are doing this and the
Yeah.
important reasons that you're doing this.
Okay, so we've kind of touched base a little bit on the parents being ready. That's a big part. You were saying the parents need to be, it's kind of like you were saying 75% parent, 25%
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what other like tips or what should the parents do to kind of prepare themselves if they're planning on sleep training their kids or their kid?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I guess the first decision is, depends which direction you're going. Like, are you going to do this yourself? Because you totally can. You can do this yourself.
Oh, I see.
Or like, are you going to trust a professional to help, like myself, to help you through it? So if you were going to do it on your own, I always tell people to make sure you do your research because, as I mentioned kind of at the beginning, there's lots of different methods out there. So
Oh, yeah.
you kind of need to like sit down and choose a method that's going to work for you. That's
Hmm.
going to be the right fit for you and it's going to be the right fit for your child, because that's one
Yeah.
thing that I look at when I'm working with my clients, is like what method, because I do use various number of strategies when working with my clients, because every child is different. So
Yeah.
choose a method that's going to work for you, and your child, number one, and then, sit down with whoever is going to be involved in the child's, sleep world, whether that just
Hmm.
be like your partner, a nanny, grandparents, and literally write out a plan. So number one, everyone is on the same page.
That's what I was going to ask too.
Consistency is
Yeah.
really important for sleep training. And then number two, your plan has every single question you have around sleep answered, because when
Yeah.
it's your little one's crying, it's going to be really hard for you to think and to make a
Hmm.
decision and make the right decision sometimes. Or when it's 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, you're really tired, and sometimes we do just whatever we need to do to get our little ones to sleep
Yeah.
and survive, right? So
Hmm.
write it out, have an answer to every single question that you have. So yeah, you don't have to think, and you have a plan in place. Because a lot of times when people come to me, when they're like, "Oh, I've tried sleep training before. It's not going to work for my little one." Usually, there's like,
Hmm.
something missing in their plan, or they don't have the right
Okay.
plan or the right strategy, or they're missing puzzle pieces to their sleep
Hmm.
training plan. So, be prepared. Everyone should be on board and, have that plan in place and choose the right, sleep training method that's going to, work for you and your child. So that's kind of
Yeah.
number one, if you're going to do it on your own. And then number two, if you're going to choose a professional like myself, like, again, do your research, because there's
Hmm.
lots of us out there and each of us have different methods that we use. So, make sure that you kind of vet a bunch of sleep consultants, that they know what they're talking about. Because yeah, even in my industry, unfortunately, I've had a lot of clients come to me and they've worked with previous sleep consultants, and some things that they're telling me that they are doing with their child, I'm like, no, 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 no wonder your child's crying so much, or it's
Yeah.
not working. So yeah, do your research, make sure that that person that you're going to work with, has been in this sleep industry for a long time and knows what they're
Hmm.
talking about and dealt with lots of babies, toddlers, children. And you
Hmm.
also have to, like that person. You have to get along with that
Yeah.
person. You have to trust that person. You kind of have to have a good vibe with that person too, right? Like, you're
Hmm.
basically putting your child in their hands and trusting
Yeah.
them. So, yeah, do your research. Just, find someone that you feel is the best fit for sure.
So, how important is it to create a conducive sleep environment?
Yeah, so I talked about before about kind of the first step of doing sleep training and coming up with a plan, and then some of the other steps are creating kind of that sleep environment. So when I'm working with clients, the first thing that I do with them is I analyze the room. I go over
Okay.
the sleep situation and the room environment, and making sure that everything is set up for sleep success.
Hmm.
Some children are very sensitive sleepers, so little things in their sleep space can throw them off. So even though your plan might be really solid and concrete, if their space is not set up correctly, then that might impact their sleep, right?
Oh,
So
I didn't even think about
just
that. Okay.
just like adults, some of us are light
Yeah.
sensitive. Some of us don't want to
Yeah.
sleep with like a lot of light in the room, or
Hmm.
some of us need even white noise to still sleep, or
Hmm.
some of us really like the
I was
fan
just gonna say like
sound.
temperature of the fan. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Or, you don't want, any blinking, glowing, flashing lights in your room when you're sleeping, or some of us don't want clocks in your room. So even as adults, we have particular ways that we like to sleep. So children and babies are not much different. So yeah, you just make sure that their sleep space is set up correctly for, what's going to work for your child. So I analyze the room, the typical things that I'm kind of looking for when I'm analyzing a nursery or bedroom, is, the lighting. What's the light going to be like? At nighttime, generally it's not that big of a deal, but now that springtime is coming, it's starting to get dark at 8 o'clock or later. And if your child's going to sleep at 7 o'clock, it's bright in the room, and that might be hard for
That's
your
what
child.
we do 7.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's still bright here in Canada. It's still bright now. So, and if your child is light sensitive, you might need to get like blackout blinds. So I assess kind of like the lighting in the room. Same thing with the crib or the sleep space. Like, what's in the bed? What's in the sleep space? Is it safe? Of course, number one. Or is it distracting? All the fancy gadgets out there, some of them are really not great for sleep. Some of them have a lot of blinking, glowing, flashing lights, or toys that are making noise, or is there blue light in the room? Blue light's an inhibitor of sleep, so that's another thing I look for, is like what's blinking, glowing, flashing in the room. And then, the noise level in the house. Do you have another toddler that's, running around and screaming, and, you're trying to get through like bedtime battles, and then you have a baby who's trying to go to sleep. So do you need a sound machine, or you have like a dog, or, noisy neighbors? So making sure that the room is set up for sleep success. So it's like when you go to implement your plan, you don't have to think about that. Like, the environment's good, my child has everything that they need. And now we just have to worry about, implementing the right strategies for them.
Okay. So can you suggest a basic kind of nighttime routine for someone who's kind of transitioning their baby to sleep training?
Yeah, so like a bedtime routine is super important for everyone, really. And even as a newborn, you can kind of implement a bedtime routine. Whenever we're doing sleep training, we always start at bedtime. So it's really important to kind of have a routine, and that sets like the little one up for sleep success, just in terms of knowing what's coming. Like, okay, bedtime routine is starting. Okay, now it's time to like wind down. Like, sleep time is coming soon. So you can start it as like young as a newborn. A newborn is probably going to be a little bit more condensed. It's not going to be as long as like putting a toddler to bed, for sure. The biggest one is a bath. That's really great. A bath actually drops our core body temperature, which is great, which is really great for sleep, because we want it to sleep in cooler conditions. And in order to do that, our core temperature needs to drop a couple degrees. So a bath is really great. You don't have to do the bath, though. I get asked that a lot. People are like, do I have to do a bath every single night? You don't necessarily have to. Keeping it really calming.
My toddler will just go and play sometimes in the bath, and just have that as like her, just to make it like kind of like a habit too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's just nice. A little like a wind down, just like, and get all those germs off as well from the day. Or if you're like, starting solids, they're really messy as well. So there's lots of benefits to it, but you don't have to. I always say a bath, or, like a wash down, or a massage, or lotions, that kind of thing. Books are really great, or maybe you're just doing songs when baby not into books yet. Changing the lighting up as well is really important. We want bright lights during the day, lots of lighting, but then maybe you put on kind of like mood lighting, I call it, or evening lighting. So, maybe you're turning on your side lamps and turning off your pot lights, closing the blinds a bit. But bath, kind of PJs, short story or song, and then bedtime, keeping it simple. You don't want a long drawn out routine, 30, 40 minutes max. And trying to do it every night to kind of set that, the same expectations, so the little one knows that sleep time is coming.
Mm-hmm. Especially, I was thinking as you were saying that too, when you have like a newborn, because for them, they don't really know the difference between daytime and nighttime too. So I feel like it can help kind of establish them, starting to sleep at night versus, during the day, and not knowing, when, when is like the time to sleep,
Yep, for
like
sure. So Yeah, day and nighttime confusion is really common for newborns. So exposing them to lots of natural light during the day is like super important for that. And even for, babies, like toddlers, adults, exposing ourselves
Yeah.
to natural light, like, for 2 hours during the day is really important for our sleep as
Yeah.
well. First thing in the morning, getting that natural light is really important for sleep. So
Mhm.
yeah, changing the lighting. I always tell people, even before your bedtime routine starts, to start changing the lighting in your house. We're not really
That's
supposed to have any screens,
mhm.
45 minutes to an hour before
Yeah.
bed. Babies to adults, same
Mhm.
thing. So, turning off the
Yeah.
screens, maybe you're turning off the music in the house, closing the blinds, that putting that mood lighting on. So, melatonin can kind of start and sink in and, tell our brain that, it's tired. The sleep hormone melatonin is tired.
Mhm.
It's time to go to sleep. So, yeah, like just little things like that can really help the process of winding down and going to sleep, especially if you're dealing with toddlers and the bedtime
Oh yeah.
battles.
Yeah. Yeah. I know all about that. That's what
Yes.
we've been going through lately. Yeah, my daughter, she's almost 2.5. She does pretty well with sleep, but that's something with this most recent time change with us
Yeah.
because she goes to bed at 7. So now she was confused. We have a one of the hatch sound machines,
Yep. Yep.
and it always would go on at 7 o'clock, and that's kind of like one of her signals because we do bath time before, but she heard her thing go off after daylight
Oh,
savings,
right.
and it
Yes.
was still daytime, and she goes,
Yes.
turn it off, turn it
I
off, and she was crying. She
know.
turned it off. I'm like, oh no, honey. I'm like, it's night time, but that was something because but that kind of helps me like with what you're saying too, like I can start closing the blinds and kind of like trying to you know, ease her into it more, especially time changes and stuff like that.
Time changes, yeah, and it's only going to like stay brighter and brighter later and later as we're coming into
Hmm.
like spring and summer, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, kind of like staying around the same time is really important for sleep as well. So,
Hmm.
with our natural circadian rhythm. So if we stay around the same time and change the mood lighting and all that in the house, then it can help, make bedtime a
Hmm.
little bit easier.
Yeah. Okay, so why do some sleep training efforts fail? I know we kind of touched base a little bit earlier, but if you can kind of go a little bit more into that.
Yeah, so I mentioned before about being consistent, right? Being
Yeah.
consistent is really important. You want to, create expectations and do similar things with your child. So
Hmm.
sometimes sleep training can fail when you're not consistent, right? So you
Yeah.
want to send the same message to your child. You don't want to confuse your child. So if like, for 1 or 2 weeks you're doing something, you're staying consistent and you're following the plan and you're forming these habits, and then all of a sudden something changes and then you start to do things a little differently, then that's not being consistent anymore. That's not sending the same
Yeah.
messages to your child, and then your child gets confused. So
Mhm.
yeah, not being consistent, not following the plan, kind of doing one thing one day and then another thing the next day can be really
Yeah.
confusing for your child, and that can mess up
Mhm.
sleep. Sometimes both, parents are not on the same page. So sometimes
Yeah. I
that's
feel like that's
when,
a big one.
sleep training can fail, where, maybe you and your child, you're putting in all this hard work, and then the other partner comes in and like interrupts that
Mhm.
process and does something completely differently. Again, that's confusing for the child. Or like maybe parents are doing a great job, but then, grandparents come into the picture
That's what I
and,
was about to say. Yeah.
they're doing something completely different.
Mhm.
Depends on the child. Like some children can understand the difference, that like, we're at
Mhm.
home and this is like, parents, and this is my
Mhm.
parents and this is what the expectations are. And oh, this is like fun time with grandparents, and so you can
Yeah.
get away with it. But some children who are like really sensitive sleepers or don't have as great like sleep hygiene, it's called,
Yeah.
then that can really impact them for sure.
Mhm.
So yeah, so sometimes not being consistent with whoever is helping with sleep. Daycare
Mhm.
sometimes can throw things off.
Oh.
Again, very similar response. Most children understand the difference where it's like at
Yeah.
home or daycare, but I have had some situations where, we're doing everything right, we're following the plan, but child, like, baby is still just, something's up. And then we
Mhm.
chat with daycare, and, daycare's, doing their own thing and not being, on the same
Mhm.
page as us. So, yeah, most of the time, that's some of the reasons. Teething doesn't, like I work with children all the time who are teething, so that doesn't really impact sleep training. Even if they're in sleep regressions, you can still sleep train.
Oh,
Illnesses, yeah, sleep regressions, you can still train. Illnesses are a big one. So if I'm just starting out with a client and the little one gets sick, then sometimes we pause if they haven't established a lot of those healthy, independent sleep habits yet. And sometimes we pause because, I just want to make sure baby's okay or child's okay
yeah.
before going forward. But if your child has established those healthy sleep habits, they sleep independently, then you can still, maintain that consistent sleep even when they're sick. Sometimes we just have to be a little bit more flexible and go about it differently. And that's something that I coach my clients on.
Okay, so before we let you go, I have one very, very, very important question. Okay, so if sleep training was an Olympic sport, what would be the most challenging event?
It'd be a very challenging
Yeah.
Olympic sport for sure. I would say like the bedtime battles like would probably be the most challenging for the Olympic sport for sure, especially if you were dealing with toddlers. Like you
Mm-hmm.
could do like a timed race or something on who could get their child like through bedtime the quickest, or
Mm-hmm.
minimal amount of tears at bedtime, or you get scored on on points in terms of going through the bedtime routine. I'd say that's probably the most challenging for most
Yeah.
is bedtime, because it doesn't go away, right? They just,
Mm-hmm.
toddlers kind of stop napping,
Yes.
but you still got to get them to bed, so it
Mm-hmm.
never really goes away. So yeah, bedtime battles could be an Olympic sport for sure.